suddenly erupted in violence between the Kurus and the Pandavas. Purport: the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam begins with a reference to the pastimes executed by Lord Sri Krishna in the 10th canto. The beginning of the 10th canto describes that when the earth was overburdened by demoniac rulers, the personified earth, Bhumi, approached Lord Brahma with tears in her eyes, begging for relief, and Brahma immediately went with the demigods to approach the Supreme Lord in his form of Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. As the demigods waited respectfully on the shore of the Milk Ocean, the Supreme Lord announced through Brahma that he would soon incarnate on earth, and that the demigod should also descend to assist in his pastimes. Thus, from the very beginning of Lord Krishna's appearance, it was understood that he would descend to the earth to remove the demons. As Srila Prabhupada states in his commentary to Bhagavad Gita, those who agree to obey the injunctions of revealed scriptures are known as demigods, whereas those who defy the orders of Vedic scriptures are known as asuras or demons. The Vedic literatures are presented within the universe for the guidance of the conditioned souls who are trapped under the three modes of material nature and who are therefore rotating in a continuous cycle of birth and death. By strictly adhering to the Vedic injunctions, we can easily satisfy our material needs and at the same time make tangible progress on the path back home, back to Godhead. Thus we can achieve an eternal life of bliss and knowledge in the Lord's own abode simply by obeying the Lord's instructions as they are presented in the Vedic literature such as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The demons, however, minimize or even mock the absolute authority of the Supreme Lord and his teachings. Because these asuras envy the sovereign status of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they minimize the importance of the Vedic scriptures which emanate directly from the breathing of the Lord. The demons establish a society governed by their own concocted whims and inevitably create chaos and misery, especially for pious living entities who sincerely desire to follow the will of God. Lord Sri Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita that when there is a predominance of such chaotic, irreligious societies on the earth, he personally descends to rectify the imbalance. Thus, from the very beginning of his transcendental infancy, Krishna systematically killed the powerful asuras or demons who were an intolerable burden for the earth. Lord Sri Krishna was assisted by his brother Balaram, who was also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although God is one, he can expand himself to enjoy in many forms at once. That is his omnipotence. And the first such expansion is Balaram or Baladev. Balaram killed many noteworthy demons, including Denakasura, Dravida, and the envious Rukmi. Krishna was also accompanied by members of the Yadu dynasty, many of whom were demigods who had descended to assist the Lord. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, has revealed that although many demigods had taken birth in the Yadu dynasty to assist the Lord, some members of the Yadu dynasty were actually inimical toward Krishna because of their mundane vision of the Lord. They consider themselves to be on the same level as Krishna. Having taken birth in the family of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, they had inconceivable strength, and thus they misunderstood Krishna's supreme position. Having forgotten that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it would constitute a great burden, and consequently it was necessary for the Lord to remove them from the earth. There is a popular saying that familiarity breeds contempt. To destroy the contemptuous members of his own dynasty, the Lord caused a quarrel among them. For this purpose, he arranged for Narada and other sages to display anger towards the Krsnas, the member of his family. Although many Yadus who were devoted to Krishna were apparently killed in this fratricidal war, Lord Krishna actually returned them to their original positions as universal directors or demigods. It was the Lord's promise in Bhagavad Gita that he will always protect those who are favorable to his service. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this verse, has given a summary of the entire 11th canto as follows. Chapter 1 describes the beginning of the Moshala Lila, or the prelude to the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. Chapters 2 through 5 describe the conversations between the 9 Yogendras and King Nimi. Chapter 6 describes the prayers of Brahma, Shiva, and other residents of heaven. Chapters 7 through 29 present the conversation between Krishna and Uddhava that is known as the Uddhava Gita. Chapter 30 describes the withdrawal of the Yadu dynasty from the earth. The final chapter describes the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Translation: Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, accompanied by Balaram and surrounded by the Yadu dynasty, executed the killing of many demons. Then, further to remove the burden of the earth, the Lord arranged for the great battle of Kurukshetra, which suddenly erupted in violence between the Kurus and the Pandavas. So after describing the pastimes of Krishna, the 11th canto goes on to describe the concluding of those pastimes. That is how the Lord disappeared and how the dynasty of the Yadus disappeared. However, this is an external appearance because actually the Yadus are eternal associates of the Lord, so they never die. They may disappear, but they never die. Of course, we do have demigods or devatas who appeared within the Yadu dynasty. And after the disappearance of the Yadus, they returned to Svargaloka. And on the other hand, we have the eternal associates of the Lord. So it's described that though it appears that they killed each other at Prabhasa Kshetra, actually they were not killed at all, but rather they returned to Dwarka and they reside there even today, performing pastimes with Krishna. And Krishna also did not die by getting shot by a hunter. He also sits in Dwarka and he continues with his pastimes. So therefore there's an external appearance of Krishna disappearing and the Yadus disappearing. On the other hand, we understand that they're eternal. And that's also made clear in the Bhagavatam itself, where it describes how when Krishna was shot in the foot by the arrow, then a chariot came down and took him upwards to Vaikuntha. So, but no one could see that, so they just saw the body of Krishna lying there. So that was an external form made out of material energy for fooling the materialistic people. So we have an appearance of a disappearance of Krishna and the Yadus, but actually they don't disappear. And the reason for this, of course, is that there has to be a method of disappearance, because the Lord does not stay forever. He, as avatar, he comes and then he goes. So he has to disappear somehow or other. And we find he disappears in different ways, in different avatar forms. In Rama, he takes one form of disappearing. And here we find a different way, which is quite unique. We could say it does not enhance the picture of the Supreme Lord as the Lord, because we find that he gets shot in the foot and he dies from that. It sounds very strange. And his dynasty itself, they fought among themselves, and that's how they were annihilated. So it is a rather, we could say, a peculiar way for the Lord to end his pastimes, when he could have very well made some other arrangement, like getting a chariot and going up in the sky and disappearing or whatever like that. But he didn't do so. So there is a particular reason for all of this. One reason, of course, is that Krishna himself acts like a normal person, and he appears to be born like a normal person in the prison, and they get smuggled out of the prison and hide in Vrindavan for 11 years and then go back and kill the demons, etc. So it appears like he is a normal person. So therefore, to continue that, he also disappears like a normal person may disappear, getting shot or whatever. And similarly, his dynasty disappeared in a not a spectacular way, but in a very mundane way, by fighting among themselves. However, it also is there's a justification for that, because no one should be able to defeat the Yadus, since they are the devotees of the Lord. So then the only way they can be defeated is by themselves. They can fight among themselves. They can't be defeated by anyone else. So that's one logic used to so why they fought among themselves. They couldn't have an external source. Nevertheless, the Yadus have to disappear. If the Lord is going to disappear, the Yadus also have to disappear. They are associates of the Lord, so they cannot stay separate from the Lord, so there has to be some arrangement for their disappearance. And the Lord himself has to disappear, because he comes and he leaves at a certain time. He doesn't stay forever. That's so in the case of Krishna, he stayed for 125 years, and then he disappeared. So he has to have some means of disappearing. Right? So his appearance and his disappearance were, we can say, more like a common appearance and disappearance than remarkable. We find remarkable appearance, such as Nrsimhadev appearing from a pillar. That's how he made his appearance. He wasn't born from anyone. Or we find Varaha born from the nostril of Lord Brahma, of all things. So it's a very extraordinary way in which he manifested himself. Whereas Krishna looked like he appeared as a normal child, and then he got smuggled out of the prison, etc. So his appearance itself is very human-like. And similarly, his disappearance is similar. So in scriptures like Vishnu Purana, for instance, Krishna is described as having a human-like form. He is the supreme Brahman with a human form. More, of course, we find that others, such as Ramchandra, has a human-like form also, but Krishna is much more human-like, because he displays much less the powers of the Supreme Lord directly. He may hide them at many times. So he's particularly referred to as being very human-like in his manifestation, in spite of the fact he is Supreme Lord. So therefore, it is suitable that he disappears in a more human-like way than other forms of the Lord would disappear. So he disappeared in this particular manner, which is described within this canto of the Bhagavatam. So in this way, the Lord made some arrangement for his disappearance and the disappearance of the Yadus, all of which involved some sort of prior arrangements of the Lord through his various spiritual energies to accomplish this fact. So, as I said, the Lord is eternally with his devotees. So he makes one arrangement for a disappearance, and then the other arrangement is that he continues as previously. He doesn't disappear at all, in one sense, to those who have spiritual eyes. So therefore the pastimes continue in Dwarka as the pastimes continue in Vrindavan also. So we would think that Krishna left Vrindavan, but no, he's also there eternally. And similarly, he didn't get killed at Prabhasa Kshetra, but rather he simply disappeared, and then he continued his pastimes in Dwarka. The city itself looked like it also disappeared. So it's described that the ocean rose up and covered Dwarka. It got flooded. But in one sense, yes, historically it's true. But on the other hand, the city is still there, just as the forests of Vrindavan are still there, and the pastimes are going on there. So in Dwarka itself, the pastimes continue there, in spite of the fact that we don't see them because it looks like they're covered by the ocean or whatever. So the Dham is eternal, and the associates are eternal, and Supreme Lord is eternal, and they continue as always eternally to perform these pastimes. But it takes spiritual eyes to see this. So as in Dwarka, so also in Vrindavan, the pastimes of the Lord continue. So the this after the pastimes of the 10th canto, which were full of bliss, we have various types of pastimes there. Some very intimate pastimes, like we have the Govardhan Lila or the Damodar Lila, etc., Ras Lila, etc. And then we have the pastimes of killing the demons. So that's described in this verse, Daityavadam, to kill the demons. And to remove the burden of the earth. It's mentioned here that the Lord made some arrangement for further reducing the burden of the earth in the form of the Kurukshetra war. So as of when Sukadeva speaks this, he hasn't spoken about the Kurukshetra war yet. So he made arrangements for that to happen, in which the rest of the burden was removed. So, as long as there was a burden to the earth and there were demons, then the Lord felt obliged to combat the demons. And that was one of his reasons why he didn't return to Vrindavan, because he still had to kill some demons. However, after killing Dantavakra, he no longer fought. He did not fight. Dantavakra was the last demon he killed, and then after that he was free. He himself personally didn't involve after that point. So why the demons are mentioned is because that was the superficial cause for the appearance of the Lord within this world. As described in the purport, how the earth complained to Brahma, and then Brahma went to the milk ocean and he offered requests to the Supreme Lord. And then the Supreme Lord said, I will come into this world to help remove the burden of the earth. So the original cause was the complaint from Bhumi, the earth, which is, let's say, representative of the pain of all the persons on earth who are affected when dharma is destroyed and adharma becomes prominent. So that is called the burden, when there's no dharma and there's lots of adharma. So the earth is often compared to the cow, and the cow is compared to the earth because the cow produces milk, just as the earth produces food and water for the animals and human beings to survive. And when there is adharma, then this production is stopped. And in the Bhagavatam, adharma was personified by Kali, and dharma was personified by the bull. Kali was attacking the bull, and adharma was getting destroyed by adharma. And what happened to the cow? The cow suffered. The cow began to cry. So when the cow suffers, the cow does not give milk. The burden of the earth is the adharma, or the sinful activities, but then the end result for the human being and the animals is that the earth does not produce properly, and therefore everyone suffers. So when there's increase of adharma, which is the burden for the earth, the earth stops giving water and food, and then everybody suffers from that. So that's a bigger burden that's created. A complete disturbance of the earth because of this. So the earth was complaining that was happening at the time, and therefore the earth went to Brahma, and Brahma went to Vishnu to complain about this. And for that reason, Krishna appeared to kill the demons, get rid of adharma, re-establish dharma, and then the earth would be relieved of its burden, and the earth would start producing properly again, and then everyone could live very peacefully. So that was the original cause for the appearance of Krishna. So that is why this topic comes up all the time, that the Lord removed the burden of the earth. But on a higher level, of course, the reason for the Lord's appearance is something else. It's not just to kill demons and restore dharma and make the earth produce. In one sense, we could say that's a material reason. Get food and water for people, etc. No, the higher reason, of course, is to give pleasure to the devotees by performance of pastimes. So that's a higher reason for the Lord appearing in this world. The Lord appears because the devotees are eager to meet the Lord and participate with the Lord in pastimes. And through that, the devotees get bliss and the Lord gets bliss. So the Lord is eager to satisfy the devotees. And when the devotees get bliss, the Lord is blissful. So there's an increase of bliss by the Lord appearing within this world and manifesting his pastimes. So the other burden that is removed is the burden of separation from the Lord. The devotees have separation, and when the Lord appears, then they can meet the Lord and they become full of joy. So in this way, the devotee is united with the Lord. But then the Lord must also disappear again. And we find that he disappeared, and then he removed the devotees of Dwarka in this manner, and then a different method for the Pandavas, a different method for the people of Vrindavan. So it's described in he went back to Vrindavan after killing Dantavakra, and he stayed there for some time, and one form went back to Dwarka, and the other form stayed for some time in Vrindavan, and they had pastimes. The people of Vrindavan had pastimes with Krishna. Then he put them all on a big chariot, and they all went up to Vaikuntha. So that's another way of disappearing. But simultaneously, they remain apricot within Vrindavan itself, having their pastimes, as they are in Dwarka. So he made some arrangement for the disappearance of the devotees in different ways in different places. And at the same time, the pastimes continue. The Lord in the spiritual body and the devotees in the spiritual body. So the devotees in the material world are separated from the Lord. The Lord appears and manifests his pastimes. They get great joy. And then there's an appearance of separation because the Lord separates. But actually, again, the Lord unites with those devotees and they continue the apricot pastimes after the Lord's disappeared and the devotees have disappeared. So in this way, the devotees do not feel any separation from the Lord. So this is a higher reason for the Lord appearing, to satisfy those devotees who are longing to see the Lord and longing to see his pastimes within this material world. And when the Lord does this, the devotees are full of bliss, and the Lord becomes full of bliss also. So the killing of the demons and relieving the earth of burden is, we can say, a secondary aspect of the Lord's appearance, which he accomplishes also because sometimes these demons interfere with the pastimes. So therefore, he has to get rid of them so that the pastimes can continue unobstructed. So it's a side effect of the Lord's desire to perform his pastimes with the devotees. And in removing the burden of the earth and killing the demons, we see that the extraordinary feature of Krishna is that even these demons get great benefit. So it's described that anyone who saw the Lord on the battle of Kurukshetra, they got liberation just by seeing the Lord there. And we see that when the Lord kills the demons, that they may get liberation, or they may get a form in the spiritual world. So even the demons get great benefit from the appearance of the Lord. They can get liberation, or they can go to the spiritual world. So this is also a feature, a unique feature of Krishna's manifestation. Therefore, in coming and relieving the earth of the burden of the earth, Krishna not only did that, but he also gave some blessings to the demons.
We find that the contrast that in Mahabharata, Kurukshetra, the Lord brought all the demonic kings, they got killed. But here we find that he's setting the own family members to get fighting each other to get rid of the burden.
Yeah.
There also is getting rid of the burden.
Yeah, we find different means for different persons. So like for the Pandavas, they didn't get killed, they survived, but then when the Lord disappeared, then they had to disappear in another way, so therefore they went up to the Himalayas. So each particular set of devotees, he makes some different arrangement, but they all sooner or later, they have to disappear somehow or other.
Why the Pandavas, instead of going to Vaikuntha or Golok, they go to Swarga? Swarga is a heavenly planet.
Well, that's that's external again. So we find that some aspects of the Pandavas' pastimes are more for, we can say, varnashram system, etc. And in terms of punya, so they would have examples of svarga, etc. But ultimately, they are devotees of the Lord, so they reside in the spiritual world also. So we see that in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, for instance. He goes to the spiritual world. The Pandavas are also there. So it's not that it just went up to some limited place.
So we find in the Puranas that when Yudhishthira went to heaven, he finds Duryodhana, Shakuni and all in heaven.
Yeah. So that's,
and his brothers were in hell.
That's this regular material dharma aspect. So we don't have to really put too much faith in those stories.
But then we see that the burden that is mentioned here is only the impious activities of Jesus.
Uh-huh.
Because so many jivas keep losing the body and getting the body. So that it's not by the physical death of anybody it is considered the burden is less. Only the impious activities which adds up to the burden.
Well, the burden is an increase of sinful activities because the great demons encourage adharma and they destroy any system that is established by the Manus and their descendants. So therefore there is an extra increase of adharma. And that adharma causes, we can say, lots of sinful activity, violent activity. Consequently, the earth itself does not give any produce, etc., because of that. So therefore, everybody suffers because of that. So we can say that the increase of sinful activities interrupts the workings of the natural workings of the earth.
But these sinful activities, there are some recommendations of prayaschitas in the scriptures. Some sinful activities are only said to be without any prayaschitta, like killing a brahmana or making a foolish wife. These are said to be without any prayaschitta. So only that sort of sins will add up to the burden, or also some have prayaschitta.
Well, they may have prayashits, but the people who are dharma don't do the prayashittas also. They just do these sinful activities, no prayashittas, because they don't believe in karma. So then they just increase the sins, that's all, the effects of sins.
Maharaj, when Krishna disappears in a particular way, we understand. But we also see pure devotees living in accidents and all that, or very disease like cancer and all that. Is it the same way, or how to get that?
Well, we can't understand that. We don't know that now there is, even for pure devotees, there's an appearance of karma. It's not real karma; it's an arrangement of the Lord. Of course, those who are like the Pandavas don't have any karma at all, so there's no appearance of karma at all. So it's just purely an arrangement of the Lord. However, those devotees who are coming out of the material world, they still have a material body, which is the remnants of karma. And along with that, there's a pattern of karma. But due to bhakti, they destroy all the karma. But the body remains, and a pattern of something remains, because the body has to do something in the material world. It's got to live, it's got to survive for a certain period of time. So the Lord arranges that it follows a pattern of karma that looks like karma, even though that devotee is beyond karma and he's under the Lord. So as long as the devotee remains in the world, there's a pattern that looks like karma there for that person.
With regard to developing a spiritual vision, is it gradual and progressive, or does it happen at once at a particular stage of devotion and from then on he sees everything? How does the spiritual vision is manifesting for a sadhaka or a
Well, we
sadhaka?
have the general vision given itself by knowledge of Scripture in the very beginning. So when we have Sambandha Abhideya Prayojana, there we get a method and a goal for us set out. So that's the general goal. And as one advances, then one particularizes and personalizes that goal. That's all.
Maharaj, with regard to the unmanifested, manifested pastimes, even after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, all they finished their pastimes, we understand from the Leelas that they again manifested their pastime during the Keturi Gram festival. And they were manifest to the entire devotee community. How to understand? I mean, everybody could see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Well, of course, that's because those devotees themselves had spiritual vision. So even Krishna has uppercut pastimes, and if you have spiritual vision, then you can see those pastimes also in Vrindavan now, or in Dwarka. You can see the pastimes if you have that vision. So the people of Keturi Gram or whatever, they because they had proper vision, then they could see the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda.
And again, Maharaj, here the Yadus could destroy only, I mean, no external force can destroy the Yadu dynasty. That's why Krishna made a pastime for them to get destructed in a particular way. But Prabhupada also said the Krishna conscious movement cannot be destroyed by any external source, external agencies or anything. It's only the internal devotees. Is there any relationship in that regard?
Well, we can say that in one sense, everything's up to the will of the Lord, obviously, but material forces, in one sense, cannot interfere with the will of the Supreme Lord. However, if the movement itself becomes diluted or impure or whatever, then the Lord may leave it. In that sense, then it gets destroyed because it's not under the Lord's protection anymore.
But we find that in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in the purport it says the demigods became, who are the Yadus became very puffed up.
Yeah.
They thought, my question is, how can they be having this type of mentality, having associated with the Lord during the war and many times? They should got purified, and why they have the negative?
Well, this is a particular group. Now, we do have the Nityasiddhas who never become contaminated. Then we have the Devatas who were devotees to the Lord and returned to their posts. And then we have a few others who are also, we call the demoniac elements, who somehow got in there by some means. I don't know how they got in there. So they were separate. So just like in Vrindavan itself, I think it's what is this? Govardhan Mala is actually one of Kamsa's men sitting in Vrindavan there. So we have a few odd people that mix with the devotees sometimes. Maybe that's an arrangement of Krishna also. Or we find Kamsa himself appears within the Yadu, among the Yadus. He's there as a Vrishni member also, Kamsa himself, persecuting his own, father and whatever. So we find demons appearing even within the devotee Vamsa or dynasty.
I find all this pastime, the Lord is arranging all these facilities. Sometimes for an erring devotee, we take action on him. How can we know that Lord is having say in that? We may take action that may not be in conjunction with the Lord's
Well,
desire.
these events with the Lord are when the Lord personally appears and he makes certain arrangements. Now, the Lord isn't appearing now, so we can't say that's all arrangement of the Supreme Lord. It's our arrangements, and our arrangements may also be imperfect, or the people involved may be imperfect. So it's a much lower level, so we can't say everything is simply an arrangement of the Lord in any, the Leela sense of the term.
Sometimes we may take an incorrect decision, like wrong decision that may affect the devotees.
Yeah. So we have to be careful. Of course, in the material world, as long as we're here, we can make mistakes or whatever. If we make mistakes, then we try to correct it later on.
In the present day context, the law of the land may differ from the actual dharma what is recommended in the scriptures. For example, killing the cow is permitted by the government. So in that way, how do you advise the devotees to follow dharma?
Well, individually, all we can do is make individual determination to follow the rules of Dharma for ourselves. We cannot enforce it in other people, but we follow ourselves. That's all we can do in that case, where the law of the government is different.
You are showing the 9 stages of bhakti. There is a graph, and the graph very slowly goes up, and at a particular stage, it goes very steep up. So, is there a particular incident or a particular uh, is there a particular time when this graph goes up? So the question is like the graph goes slowly and at a particular stage it goes steep up.
Well, when we get to the later stages of bhakti, because one is approaching realization of the Lord, then the process speeds up a lot, because we get to asakti, and then we get to bhava, in which one sees the Lord, and then we get to prema. So these are the last two stages are beyond sadhana itself. So they're self-propelled. Their goal, they're not dependent on sadhana at all. It's only dependent upon the Supreme Lord's mercy at that point. So therefore, and there's no or very little impediment in bhava and nothing in prema. So therefore, we can say very, very quick at that stage.
So how does that stage come? Is there something the devotee does to go to that stage, or it naturally happens?
Well, we go through the previous stages of Nartanda Vritti, Nishta Ruchi, and Asakti to get to bhava and prema. The Devatas. Well, just like even in Brahma, he sees the Lord in Vrindavan, etc. But then he goes back and he sits in the Brahma Loka there for the whole rest of his life. So generally, they stay there for their allotted periods of time as Devatas. Well, it's individual. Some may develop greater attachment, but even so, they have to fulfill their particular duties. Yeah.
Or he just randomly selects them?
What's that?
The choice is for the devatas, or the Lord selects them?
Well, they're qualified. If they're qualified, then they get selected by the Lord and Lord Brahma and whatever to fill those posts.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki